Yes, my master connectors. This is the Master Connector Show, and we are on here.
He challenged me. He said, you should meet 2 or 3 people every day.
We're talking about how to level up on LinkedIn and engagement, being the go-giver, the idea that being open to opportunity.
We all deal with challenges, but how do you overcome that?
Master Connector with Steve Spiro and Cameron Toth is live on air.
Yes, we are, and I am excited to be talking about resilience today. Wherever you are in life, whether things are going well or whether things are going not so well, resiliency is one of these things that we are always in need of, right? You could be on the high end and things are just jamming away, and that can be taxing. Things can be going not so well, and that can be taxing. Things can be middle of the road, and you can just be like, I don't want them. Yeah, I need some excitement in my life, and being resilient with that. It's always something that we need in your life. We're getting into it today. Make sure you're letting us know where you're tuning in from. This is Cameron Toth coming to you live from Valhalla, New York. Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, is broadcasting live from Stamford, Connecticut. We look forward always to hearing where you're tuning in from, where you're representing. Get into the comments. Don't be a LinkedIn lurker. Be a LinkedIn participant. We're excited. Steve, get us into today's topic.
Yeah, well, you're talking about being taxing. I know today is the day after tax season. So, for a lot of people, hopefully your blood pressure's down, you got your taxes done, and now you can enjoy a little bit here. And for those of us that are getting some money back, even better, right? But anyway, hey, what's going on, folks? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and direct. And so, hey, do you ever have issues or trauma in your life? I know you don't, right? Life is perfect, right? It's like no issues, right? Not, right? We all have that stuff, right? It's funny. Our amygdala, right? You all know what that is. That little funny part, I think, is the back of the brain, tells us that when we face stress to go into fight or flight mode or freeze, right? It's sort of instinctive. It's sort of this caveman response that we back in ages and ages ago. That's how we're wired, But how do you get through it? In the martial arts, I had to fight guys that were a lot bigger than me. They were better skilled. They were way stronger than I was. But you know what? Resiliency got me through it. And resiliency is the process of adapting in the face of adversity. Same thing, adapting, to trauma, tragedy, threats, or stress. It's the ability to recover from and adjust to these challenges that the life experiences, whatever they are. But here's the thing: you need to become stronger so you can be more capable of facing those future challenges, right? That's my opinion, right? That's the human spirit, right? Is we get challenges and then we just sort of fight through it and we kind of overcome those challenges. There's things that we've seen over history, over time, and I've experienced it personally myself. Sometimes it can be about recognizing and understanding the sources of the stress. Sometimes that helps us, right? But it also takes the necessary steps to cope with them and find the resiliency to go on. So today, we're going to hear from a real expert who will share what we call, I don't know if she coined it or we just came up with the title, but the resiliency formula, okay? I believe it's something that she's an expert at, and I'm excited to hear from her. So if you're ready for my man, Mr. Cameron Toth, the magic man behind the camera here, to introduce our guest, type in, as you can see in the screen right there, type in, bring it. Yeah, because we want to bring it, and we're going to have a lot of fun here today, and it's going to add value for you, and I believe it's going to inspire you. So, Cameron, I'll turn it over to you, sir, to do what you do best.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to bring Dr. Taryn Marie Stejskal onto the stage here. She's a recognized international expert on resilience, mental health, and well-being in both leadership and life. She is the founder and chief resilience officer of Resilience Leadership Institute, RLI, and developed the empirically-based framework, the 5 practices of highly resilient people. Prior to founding RLI, she served as head of executive leadership development and talent strategy at Nike and head of global leadership development at Cigna. She is a Marshall Goldsmith top 100 coach globally, and her TEDx talk on resilience has been viewed over 1 million times. Her book, The 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, is available where books are sold right now. Please welcome to the Master Connector Show, the resilient and radiant Dr. Taryn Marie Stejskal. All right, say hello to the folks.
Thank you so much for that phenomenal introduction. My goodness, that's so lovely. I've gotten resilient, but not radiant in the same sentence. And I really am loving the alliteration there. So thank you for that.
Very good, very good. We get some of that going. Steve, get us started on this conversation.
Absolutely.
And you're definitely radiant, Dr. Tanner. We believe that. We're all in on that.
Cameron is an he's a wordsmith, guys. So he loves these kind of fun plays on words and stuff. But we're about bringing the light, being the light and radiant. You know, there's light there. You know, so it's all good. But so here's what I want to talk to you about. And community, we appreciate you guys. Yolanda, thanks for being on here and being a loyal viewer and follower here. We just appreciate you. Make sure, community, you're getting in there, as Cameron said, chime in, connect with each other. This is the Master Connector Show, but we want you to participate, right? So yeah, tell us where you're from. Yep, London from Frisco, Texas. But definitely type in the comments right now, hashtag tell us. And here's what we wanted to find out from you. You prefer to be called Dr. Taryn or just Taryn?
Either one. Okay. We can, right. We can switch it up. We can. Yeah.
All right. We'll keep it real. We'll keep it mixing it up here. So we want to, we all deal with challenges, right? You heard me say in the video there, right? But tell us about your biggest one and how you had the resiliency to fight through it. We love hearing stories.
Sorry, I might have missed part of that, but I'm here in a hotel, so I don't know if my Wi-Fi dropped.
Oh, okay. So we all deal with challenges, right? As you heard in my video, right? But tell us about your biggest one and how you had the resiliency to fight through that challenge.
Yeah. It's a great question. It's so interesting when we talk about resilience because we tend to use language like overcome challenge, fight through challenge, right? As a martial arts expert, this type of experience, right, is something that you have really lived. And I think those experiences are accurate, right? That language is accurate, right? And I think it also can contribute to some of the ways that, maybe we have this sort of ambivalent relationship with resilience because we feel like when challenge shows up in our lives that we need to fight and we need to be a warrior. And let's see. I'm hearing that there's some bumping in my sound.
Yeah, and I muted out, so it's definitely not me.
But
it's
Taryn, I just don't focus too much on it. But if you're seeing something, we just try to bring up issues as we're going here. But we'll keep moving.
Oh, good. Keep going, Taryn.
Yeah, I'm in Austin, Texas today for book launch. So I am joining you from the Four Seasons, which I apologize if the Wi-Fi here is not premium. So yeah, I think what I was saying is resilience is really about facing the inevitable moments of challenge, change, and complexity that show up in our lives. And perhaps sometimes that's about being in flow with those moments. The 3 C's, challenge, change, and complexity. This is the fabric of what it means to be human. And so I think often when we talk about like fighting through these moments, and there are definitely moments where we're fighting through difficult times, I think resilience or the resiliency formula is also about being in flow with these moments, right? What I realized is resilience is really the essence of being human. And that's what, my entire book, The 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, that launched yesterday, is based upon. We've talked about resilience oftentimes as being something that is outside of ourselves, something that we have to go out and find and bring back. And yet when we shift that paradigm and we think about resilience as being the essence of what it means to be human, this is who we are inherently, then that really changes the dialogue, because we can't be found to be not resilient. We can't be a resilience imposter, because we know that resilience is the essence of what it means to be human. It's fundamentally part of us. And what that gets around, I think, is this idea of people who sort of dread resilience or are afraid that they're going to be found out, that they're not resilient enough. And so when we think about, this idea of resilience, I think we get to start from a place of recognizing that resilience is the essence of being human. We are all fundamentally resilient. We get to think about the 3 C's, challenge, change, and complexity, of being the fabric of what it means to be human. This is not the exception to the rule, right? And then we get to look at, okay, if we're going to experience challenge, if this is part of the inevitable human experience, then what are the strategies that we can use to effectively and productively move through challenge, address challenge? And in some moments, that's also going to be fight through and overcome challenge. But I don't think it always has to be. So for me, if we all have resilient stories, right? Our resilient stories are the stories that we oftentimes most don't want to tell. We often hide our resilient stories because we believe that challenge, change, and complexity are things to be ashamed of. There's still a subset of us that believe that if we're strategic enough, if we're visionary enough, if we're thoughtful enough, if we're careful enough, we can engineer challenge out of our lives. And that's simply not the case. And so we get to stop feeling bad about these experiences and then look at what is the most effective way to address these inevitable moments. Oh, Steve, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Rookie mistake. I haven't done that in quite a while. There we go. I was trying to work on hopefully the bump issue, but it wasn't helping much. But yeah, so we you were mentioning flow, and I love that. And actually, my community knows I'm huge on books. I wasn't growing up, but I become huge on books. And the book that I'm looking at right now in my Audible library, which I've listened to at least once, is Flow: Living at the Peak of Your Abilities. Good luck trying to pronounce this person's the author's last name, but it's Mihaly, Mihaly, and oh man, it's Csikszentmihalyi.
I can pronounce it for you. It's
Please.
It's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who's the father of being in a flow state. And then several authors and practitioners have built on Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's initial sort of finding and identification and calling sort of this experience of being so deeply connected with the work that we do that we get into what's called a flow state. For people that are not familiar with that, which is where we're so connected with the work that we lose time, and with grace and ease we're connecting with this work with great passion and great satisfaction. And so what's happened today is we've built on Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's initial theories, and we've got Flow State Collective, we've got Stephen Kotler, and a variety of folks who are continuing to look at, from a neuropsychological standpoint, how do we get ourselves more into a state of flow.
Yeah, I love it. And inadvertently I started to get into that flow state And I started doing that when I was in the martial arts. I started cultivating that. You know, I remember before I started training the martial arts for many years. There you go. Yeah. Kudos to you to pronouncing that last name. And it's interesting how his last name has his first name in it. I don't know if that's on purpose or what the story behind that is, but anyway, yeah. But I was in the martial arts. Before that, I did tennis, and I was pretty decent. I was practicing 7 days a week, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. I was really, pretty proficient. But when I would get into competition with people, I'd blow it. I'd choke. I'd be all over in my own head, and it was horrible. And then I remember getting the martial arts, and then I wound up having, part of the culture and the training in our martial arts was it was Zen Buddhist based. So there was a lot of Zen Buddhism, but it was not. I'm not, a Zen Buddhist or anything, but just the concepts of living in the moment, being in the zone, if you will, if in the sports term. And I came back to tennis after I'd been training for at least a year and a half or 2 years, and it was way better. I was actually really, I was not in that, in my head. I was really in sort of a flow state, and I've tried to take that into different parts of my life. And just being in the moment, being in that flow, and just enjoying the stuff, the struggles, the challenges, the whatever it is, and just enjoying the journey and not focusing on all that. So it's good stuff. Yeah, I mean, you brought a lot of good points up, but that was one that kind of stood out to me the most. But we want to move into the next topic, which is the why, and a different kind of version of the why. So type in #why community, please. Thank you, Cameron. So here's the question, right? Why do you say that resilience is the essence of human being, of being a human being? I guess as I should say it. So tell us more about that, if you could.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think one of the things that has happened is we've taken this concept of resilience, and unfortunately it's been used, I think, incorrectly and to the detriment of some people in some communities. And so there are moments in time where I think we've actually weaponized resilience, and we've said to people, hey, the reason that your community didn't get rebuilt after Hurricane Katrina is you weren't resilient enough. Or we've said to marginalized groups of people, people of, diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, hey, the reason that you're, where you are in life is, you don't have enough resilience. And this has been sort of a backhanded way that we sort of blame the victim, or we blame people for where they are in life, rather than looking at sort of the broader macro level, cultural, political, economic, and social constructs that exist inside of our society. And so as I've looked at human resilience for the last 2 decades, what I actually found is that resilience is indeed the essence of being human. Just to simply be born into this world and to survive and to thrive, requires us to face, tremendous challenge and change and complexity. And so when I say to people, resilience is the essence of being human, I follow that up with, how do I know? Because each of us has faced every rejection, disappointment, loss, health diagnosis, crisis that has been put in our path to date. And we find ourselves rising to those occasions. And oftentimes those moments are really what shows us what we're made of. Something, like you, I'm very interested in language and the use of words and the, sort of neuro-linguistic representation of how the words that we use are part of how we think about and construct our experience as humans. And there's this word that's called silience, right? And silience is about finding within ourselves our strength, our talents, sort of the hidden treasures of our capability. And, so then what resilience is in these moments of challenge. It's the opportunity to connect or reconnect for the first time to actually this resilience that lives in all of us. And when we change this script, it's tremendously powerful, because then we're not talking about resilience as being, something that's outside of ourselves. It's not something you go out and find. It's something we already are. And then we can cultivate it to an even greater degree.
It's awesome. Yeah. So I did not realize that there is a word resilience. So that's interesting. And obviously that's where the name resilience comes from. That's it's interesting. Um, very, very, very fascinating. So one of the things that we're about in this show is being vulnerable, authenticity, and the what I found interesting and I watched it a while ago, but watching some of your TEDx again, I know you've had been on a TEDx stage, which is cool. It's one of my goals. So I admire that you've done that. But so we want to type in hashtag vulnerability. But again, the show being about authenticity and leading with those weaknesses and vulnerabilities. So you did a TEDx obviously on this, and how does resilience break us out of our vulnerability cage? And that's sort of the essence of what I think your talk is about. So can you kind of elaborate on that if you can?
My folks, get in there, put in that hashtag vulnerability. We want to see you in the comments. We also want to see if you have questions. All right. So as Dr. Taryn is going along, please get us some questions in there. Go ahead.
We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your questions. Well, it's interesting because as you asked that question, you talked about weaknesses in the same sentence as you talked about vulnerability, and I think that too is one of the misnomers, right, around vulnerability. I like to say after the word resilience, right, which is effectively facing the 3 C's: challenge, change, and complexity, and moving through those experiences in a way that we are enhanced, not diminished over time. After the word resilience, which is, profoundly misunderstood, I think the word vulnerability is the next, sort of most misunderstood word in this area. And vulnerability is really about allowing our inside self, our thoughts, feelings, and experience to match the outside self that we share with the world. And when we bring these 2 versions of ourselves, our thoughts, feelings, and experience on the inside, and connect those as closely as we can with the self on the outside, then what we call in psychology is a greater sense of congruence. And when we have greater congruence, this is important because when these 3 C moments show up, we need all of our energetic reserves, right? We need all of our kind of human capital that exists within us. So if we're having a really difficult time on the inside, but yet being invulnerable on the outside, right? What happens then is we don't have a sense of congruence, and we're running 2 different human operating systems at the same time, which is, burning energy when we're trying to convince people, right, that we're okay on the outside while we're, facing tremendous difficulty on the inside. And so the other part about vulnerability is in these moments of challenge, when we allow people to know what's going on for us, this allows us to have greater information, greater access, greater knowledge, and greater support in the moments that we need it most. And I think one of the reasons that we grapple with vulnerability, why very few people are running around, sort of living their most fabulous, vulnerable life, is oftentimes we do incorrectly equate vulnerability with weakness. And in fact, for anyone who's ever been vulnerable, right, what we know is that vulnerability is one of the greatest expressions of strength, right? To really allow ourselves to be known and seen. And one of the things that's emerged inside of my work, because I wanted to sort of ask this question, right? Like, why is vulnerability so hard? And what emerged is that we seem to sort of have this cognitive prohibition, right? This sort of voice in our head, if you will, that when we say, I'm going to share something meaningful with someone. I'm going to allow them to see and know me to a greater degree. I'm going to be vulnerable. There's a voice inside of our heads that says, that's so cute that you want to do that. Please don't ever do that. Please don't tell people that about yourself. And, I think the voice goes on, to sort of say a version inside of our heads. If you are vulnerable, if you allow people to see you and know you to a greater degree, the 3 L's will occur, right? The 3 L's are people won't like you, they won't love you, and they might leave, right? And that's really the sort of fear that underpins vulnerability for us as humans, is we're afraid that if people really knew us, if they really knew what was going on, that they wouldn't like us, they wouldn't love us, and they might leave. And what we find is that's actually an irrational fear, right? Now, the good news about irrational fear is that it doesn't typically exist. The bad news about irrational fear is it feels exactly like real fear, So it requires this sort of ability on our part to take this risk and to not listen to that voice and to attempt to step out of our comfort zone and get comfortable getting uncomfortable, to share something with someone, to connect at a deeper degree. And the last thing that I'll just sort of say about, vulnerability at a high level, is I think, evolutionarily, right? Like my background's in neuropsychology. I think this was meant to protect us, right? When, many thousands of years ago, when we're sort of out on the plains, right? As humans, we don't want to get separated from the pack, right? That typically means almost certain demise. We're not going to survive outside of our kind of human herd, right? And so we were like, don't be different, stick with the crowd, and this sort of vulnerability bias that appears to exist in our minds for all of us, was formed. But now our world has changed to a significant extent, obviously. And, what we find is that, in fact, vulnerability is a key to greater connection with our fellow humans. So whereas vulnerability was thought it could separate us, now vulnerability creates a greater degree of connection.
Yeah, we have some great examples. I mean, we often refer back to the Go Giver book, when the chapter on authenticity, and I think the idea that what you're talking about. I mean, I think there is a definite difference between oversharing, right, and being vulnerable, right? Oversharing is telling people at the dinner table what was going on in the bathroom, right? That's oversharing. That's probably not stuff that we need to know in the wrong moment, right? And I think those are things that in terms of good manners and the way to be, and not saying things that are inappropriate for the moment. That's a good safety valve to have in general, right? We know people that don't have good filters, right? And certainly sharing other people's business out there. But this idea that I can't show my humanity, I can't show the real person I am, with the real struggles that I have. And we say the lines on here that are rote at this point, but all the more true every time we say them. Your test is your testimony, right? Your mess is your message, right? These are things that humanize you, bring that commonality. Our show is all about connection. And so when we are able to share these things, these challenges, these messes that we have, we become all that more relatable, because, I got a messy desk, you got a messy desk. You've had some challenges in your past with family and stuff. I have, right? And so we now have that much more to build upon. But we have a question from Freeman Beals, which we're always excited about questions. So are there some daily things we can do to start fostering that vulnerability in ourselves, certain habits or skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the question. Thank you, Freeman, for writing this question. And this is wonderful. So the first thing about vulnerability is it requires us to connect to ourselves. It requires us to get to know the person that's living within our skin, and to know what we're feeling and what we're thinking and what our experience actually is, right? In order to share that accurately and authentically. So one of the beautiful things about vulnerability is it's not just vulnerability for the sake of vulnerability, which I think you were touching on, right? It's about genuine versus performative vulnerability. So performative vulnerability is kind of what you were talking about, right? It can be oversharing, it can be TMI, it can be for shock value, it can be for reputation management, it can be for, it can be ego driven. I'm going to tell you these things about myself so you think certain things about me. Whereas genuine vulnerability is always about and focused on fostering a deeper connection with another human, right? So Freeman, to your point, right, the first thing that we can do is we can actually connect deeply with ourselves and understand, what am I feeling and what am I thinking and what's coming up for me? And then think about how we want to share that vulnerably and authentically with others, right? But it starts with having an awareness of our own process. And then the next thing that we can do is to say, okay, maybe each day, right? Because I know we like to systematize things. We like to put them in a routine, maybe even gamify, right? Is to say, okay, I'm going to spend, 5 minutes at the beginning of each day, whether that's journaling or in meditation or in a moment of reflection or on a walk, and really look at what's coming up for me. What am I excited about? What am I scared about? What uncertainties do I have? What am I proud of? What's sort of the feelings, that are percolating for me? What's my mood, right? And so, spending kind of that time, and it can just be 5 minutes, over our morning coffee, to really connect deeply with ourselves. And then the next thing to do is to say, okay, who am I going to share that with for the purposes of creating a deeper and more meaningful human connection? Am I going to talk to my partner about that? Am I going to talk to my coworkers about that? Am I going to have a moment when I kick off our team meeting and say, over coffee this morning, I was in reflection and what came up for me was this, right? Something that we like to do with teams is actually to create a structure where there's an opportunity for people to share meaningfully. And one way that you can do this is through this activity called Rose, Bud, Thorn, right? So rather than getting together in a team meeting or at dinner with your family and everybody, kind of talking about, what happened over the weekend, or, trying to get out of your kids, what did they do at school, right? You can do the Rosebud Thorn exercise. I know a lot of families that do this, right? And what you do is each person has about 90 seconds, right? And you talk about the rose, which is a success or something that you're proud of and excited about. You talk about the thorn, right, which is the disappointment or the hurt or the failure or the difficulty or the uncertainty. And then the bud, the bud's fun. The bud is something emerging, something coming into fruition, something that's coming into your awareness. And I'm always just so blown away when I sit down with my children at the dinner table or when I start a meeting with my team. We take less time than we typically would, right, to sort of go around the room and, talk about what we thought about the Super Bowl commercials or who got what Grammy or Oscar, and just hearing what's going on for people in terms of a success, a thorn that's a difficulty, and what's emerging for them. It allows us to all know each other to a greater degree. And it's a great way, I think, to sort of routinize or systematize, this ability of us bringing our whole selves into conversations personally and professionally.
It's good. It's great. A tremendous amount of nuggets. And quite frankly, I had a few other questions I was going to ask, but you kind of covered almost all of them. I just want to mention one thing because, I know Cameron had some good shares. I don't want to cut him off, but, in terms of vulnerability, and we were talking about challenges and things of that sort. I want to just mention, I have a talk that I've given, and I'm planning on doing it eventually on a TEDx stage eventually, like you did. And the talk is, in our weakness, there's power. And I know that your perspective probably from challenges and so forth and vulnerabilities are not weaknesses. But for me, what happened was, in all those insecurities, the things I dealt with, I had more hangups than the phone company. I was weak in that because I was so self-consumed, self-absorbed about those inadequacies that I had, and I was wallowing in that weakness of that. And then eventually got peace within myself, eventually found that I'm okay. There's a series of events that happened between being at a silent meditation retreat and a couple of therapy sessions. I got peace within myself and realized I'm okay. And then also found that there was a complete joy in being others focused and really not really worrying about me, but being able to expose my, those weaknesses, nothing crazy, but just, being able to lead with those weaknesses and vulnerabilities. And it gave me some incredible, powerful confidence. It gave me the ability to have incredibly powerful connections with people because I was leading with those vulnerabilities. So the weakness, through that weakness, I found power. And it's sort of, it kind of reminds me a little bit of what you've been speaking about, and that there's ways that you could sort of just flip the switch a little bit and look at that and just turn those things about yourself and turn them into a powerful way that you could build relationships and cope with things and things of that sort. So yeah, this is my perspective. So, but we are already at 1:31. Cameron, I don't think we're going to get to the practices. I think in some ways, Dr. Taryn kind of covered some of those basic things with the rosebud thorn technique and things of that nature. So, this has been great. Anyone that's listened to you could tell that you are an incredible woman with incredible knowledge, and can't wait to continue to dig in some more on some of the content, get a hold of the book you're speaking about, and so for the community, what's the best way in which they could reach you? And do you have, I believe you have a offer for the, no, you don't have, yes, you do. You're providing the ebook, right? So tell us a little
I
about.
have a link to post in. If you got a link for that, Dr. Taryn, you can throw it in the link. But let people know where they can pick up the book. That's a big deal, and I'll put it on the screen while you're talking. I'll get it up here.
Amazing. Thank you so much. The book, The 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People, is launching. We're launching, people, this week. This is based on 2 decades of work and research that I've done to understand what are the practices, the commonalities that exist amongst us as humans, that in those inevitable moments of challenge, change, and complexity, we're able to harness that internal essence of being human, resilience that exists within all of us. And so this book has been a beautiful labor of love. It's already been endorsed by Arianna Huffington, who's the, of course, founder of the Huffington Post and Thrive Global. Daniel Pink, who's an incredibly luminary business thinker who's written books like Drive and The Power of Regret. Keith Ferrazzi, Marshall Goldsmith, Kathy Ireland, who of course was a model in the 90s, I believe, and now has built a tremendous company, gone from supermodel to super mogul, as she likes to say. So the book has been endorsed, by a lot of really luminary folks who just have access to so much development and growth, and have really found this to be different and unique and life-changing for them. And we've got tremendous reviews that are percolating here, just with the book being live really in the kind of the last 24 hours. It launched yesterday. So I would invite all of you who feel so called and so interested to just hop on Amazon and grab your copy of the 5 Practices of Highly Resilient People. When and if it aligns for you, we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review if you love the book. And in addition to that, if you want to walk into your local Barnes & Noble store and purchase some copies in person for family members or friends or neighbors, just be so delighted by the support that you would like to offer for this launch.
That's great. Yeah, for sure. Definitely get your hands on that. I'm going to get my hands on it as well. Looking forward to that. So beautiful. Well, this is great having you on here. We feel honored to have somebody of your caliber. By the way, I just finished reading by Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone. What a great book.
What a great book. I mean, that book never gets old. I was just chatting with Keith this morning about book launch. He's out at TED. And, that was one of the books that really changed my life. I thought, gosh, if this is how people are conducting themselves in the business world, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of what Keith's doing. And so he's an incredible person, brilliant, thoughtful, empathetic,
very brilliant.
And it's really a dream come true to have him be one of my mentors and to also endorse this book.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, tell him that I love Oh, tell him I appreciate his work. And Cameron's been telling me for quite a few time now to get a hold of that book. But because I'll eat alone, I thought it was about eating, taking lunch with somebody. I didn't. But I'm so glad
It covers a lot of ground, that book. It definitely does. All right, let me shout out our guests next week. So same bad time, same bad channel, my folks. We're on here next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. We have Tracy Enos. We're talking about the ultimate LinkedIn framework. So we're excited about that. I want to just shout out my company, Toth Event Staffing, that helps keep this thing going, keeps the wheels on the bus rolling. We appreciate that. And we're going to end this like we always do, Dr. Taryn. We're going to count down to crush it. So we put our fingers up in the air and we count down. Steve, are you ready? You ready to do this with me?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Go. Ready? We're going to count down. Community, put it in the comments too. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go out there and crush it. Have an amazing week, everybody. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for being a part of the show today. We appreciate you. Take care now.